today is more playing around with the engine, mainly to get the crank to turn. Um, One thing I should say is thanks to everyone who comments. One of the reasons I make these little films is to get feedback about what I'm doing, because there aren't very many people around here I can ask. So this is one of the reasons it takes me so long to do everything, because I like to make sure I know exactly what I'm doing. So it's good to get feedback from people with different questions and um, different comments, which help me think about what I'm trying to do and see if I've missed anything. Because sometimes I miss obvious things. But today I increased the scallops at the bottom of the cylinders. I just used a um, tungsten burr tool. I don't know if it'll focus, but with that it was quite easy to get in there and just open those out just a little bit. And again, I don't know that we'll be able to see, but got the light in there. But now there's clearance on the sides of the rods, in the bottom of the cylinder there. It was a bit hard to get the light in to see. Since I was grinding everything anyway, which creates a lot of dust, and of course you don't want dust inside your engine, grinding dust, I also used the ball hone to clean up the inside of the cylinder bores. When I do the final assembly, I may give them another really light hone, but I gave them quite a good hone this time. You could see down in the bores little ridges, or they looked like little ridges. They were little lines, which is where the engine had been sitting for so long. You could see where it must have been slight corrosion around the rings. You can see them, but you can't really feel them. So if you run your finger up inside there, you can't feel any sort of lip or anything. So I'm pretty sure those are going to be okay. I gave the cylinders a good hone out with the ball hone, which I did find in the end. That's this here. I think in the States they call them dingle ball or dingleberries, something like that. But I just put this in the drill, running on the slower if it's 2 speeds. I think that's about 400 RPM. Put oil on everything, and you just kind of run those up and down quite quickly in the bores to get a sort of 45-degree crosshatch pattern on the inside of the cylinders. And that worked really well. Again, though, that creates grinding dust because you're grinding cast iron. So I took the whole block outside and gave it a really good wash down with hot soapy water, and then basically hosed it all down to try and get rid of every single little speck of dust in there. And then I gave the whole thing a spray with WD-40, so it's all kind of oily at the moment, which is why it looks wet. I then reassembled it all. It doesn't have rings in it. It's got the pistons in it, but no rings, just to make sure the crank turns, and it does. I'm trying not to turn it too much with the rings in there. I don't want to scratch things up. I think the bores are going to be okay. The pistons are aluminium, so they're going to be softer. I've oiled everything up as well, just to be sure, to keep it all nice and lubricated and stop everything rusting. So I'll turn it over and we can have a look at the pistons. So this is the block with the pistons in place, and these are 60 thou over pistons. So for people who do metric measurements, 40 thou is about 1 millimeter. So they're about 1.5 millimeters bigger than normal. And this is a standard copper head gasket. This is from the Riley spares. So that goes on there like that, I believe. It is marked front. I'm assuming the bit marked front is also the top. But you can see, well, it's a bit hard to see, but the diameter of the holes here is actually smaller than the diameter of the piston, because this will be based on standard piston size. So I am going to have to very slightly machine just the top edge of the piston, which apparently is normal for when you're doing this. And then, of course, the other thing's going to be milling the 45-degree angle on them as well to clear the valves. That's going to be interesting, figuring out exactly how much to take off. I don't think it's much at all, and I am thinking I can probably calculate it. So somebody pointed out in the comments the amount of clearance I need is going to depend a bit on the camshafts that I'm running. So the camshaft, look over here. This is the head, and the Riley 9 engine is kind of interesting in that the cam gear actually goes in the aluminium rocker box covers that go on top of here. So I have to fit those before I can actually see how this is all going to work. So the camshafts, I can measure them, and I have done it before to figure out how much lift I actually get on them. And theoretically, you could work out from the amount of lift on the camshaft, there's the rockers that come up the middle here, you can probably figure out the ratio on these. So this is one of the rocker arms, and calculate how much lift you're actually going to get. But I think I'm going to be better off just trying to assemble it and actually trying to figure it out that way. It's going to be quite fiddly. I do need to get a couple of replacement ones of these, where some of these are quite worn out. You can see I've got it written on there, marginal, where they've been ground down a little bit too far, I think. But that'll be the next step, is figuring out how to machine these. I need to do that next so that I can balance the pistons, and then I can send the entire lot off for balancing, because I need to balance the flywheel. I also had an email from someone who sent me some pictures of an engine stand basically built for a Riley 9 engine, which clamps onto the side. So you'd have to imagine the engine being around that way. And the way the clamp works is, normally you've got the engine mounting bar through here, so there's a steel plate, and it looks like it goes from here, and then I think there was a bracket that came back to the bell housing bolts. So it may be possible for me to make something similar. If I can get some tube and some plate, maybe I can build something similar so that the engine is being held this side, which then means you can rotate it around and get access to either end, which may be a little bit better. I'm guessing you'd put the stand on this side because it's clear, it doesn't have the mount for the starter. So that's something I may look at as well. It's definitely easier to do everything on the engine stand. I did find on mine that the gap here isn't very accurate. So what would happen is the hole for the pin wouldn't line up. And I did actually machine a little piece of tube to go inside there, but I didn't realize that this inner tube, there's actually a gap between this ring and that inner tube. So my little spacer just fell into the gap, so it's not actually doing anything at the moment. So I need to machine up something else, find a better piece of, a thicker walled piece of pipe, I think, that I can make a spacer in there to make sure this lines up. But a little bit more progress today.